Welcome back to your weekly dose of motivation, brought to you by the Motivating Force podcast. You're listening to Josue, an aspiring Marine Corps officer who is finishing up ROTC and working towards his bachelor's in criminal justice, and myself, Justin, a motivational speaker who's always excited to share our new ideas and topics with you. We are both highly motivated individuals who love to question everything and share some rather unique viewpoints with all of our listeners.
For those of you who are joining us from last week, hopefully you understand the importance of finding those jobs that build up to your career path, or at least finding the jobs that you have an interest in. Now, we need to focus on the issues that come from either working too hard or not enough. You'll get the points we're trying to say about this as we start the weekly drive. So let's get this fire lit
and get motivated. So this week we're going to be talking about balancing work and play. Real quick, we're going to hit you guys with what work and play mean to us here so you can see the general direction of where we're going this episode. To start, work is anything you do to earn money, or things that you do to lead up to you earning money. Play involves pretty much every other aspect of your waking life. This is everything you do in your free time. All of your hobbies, any crafts, writing, video games, this all falls into playtime. Your relationships also fall into playtime. Going out on dates, going to hang out with your friends, all this is considered play. These are generally things that don't earn you any money, and on the contrary, most of the time they actually cost you money. We feel that this topic's very important in today's age because we are spending a lot of time on the internet where we can turn our hobbies into things that are monetized, such as live streaming video games or writing a book. We have such a large audience now and so many people we can get to on the internet, and that's a great thing. But we're taking our playtime and we're turning it into work without realizing it. The example being when you come home from work, right? I just want to spend, maybe an hour or so just playing some video games, relaxing, getting my mind off of the duties for the day, right? But what some people will do is they'll start to live stream the video games they're playing, right? They're like, oh, well, I'm pretty good at this game. Me and my friends, we share some great jokes from time to time. Like, this would be entertaining to watch.
Right.
I could make money off of this. So they'll start live streaming it. As soon as they do that, without even realizing it, they turn that playtime into more work.
So they're essentially doubling up on the work time that they're spending every day.
And it's interesting to see that because they'll feel like mentally they're understanding that they're getting this playtime in, but they're now holding up certain levels of responsibility to, say, make a live streaming schedule, to, just make sure even just down to the way they're speaking, that their language is censored so that way they're more approved for live streaming. Everybody can watch it, right? And they put these little restrictions on themselves that are like, oh, this is all okay. And the reality of it is they're not playing anymore, right?
Right. They're not getting that disconnect and having that time to rest and just de-stress because now, like you said, they're being held up to those standards of setting that schedule for them to be on at a certain time. They're essentially having two jobs now, and that takes a lot of energy out of people.
And of course, it's great to have two jobs if that's the type of person you are, right? Something, or even something you need to do. There's nothing wrong with that. But what we're trying to say here is making sure you make that clear distinction between work and play. Because a lot of times we don't actually realize when we're working. We use this podcast as an example because we started this off as play. We've already kind of figured that we have these long, boring conversations together pretty much every time we hang out. The only thing we did different now was, well, let's put two mics in front of us and have the conversation out there for the world. But obviously, going from play to work now, it means a lot more than just putting two mics in front of us, right?
Yeah, there's the work that goes on behind the scenes that now we have to either research or now focus what we're going to be talking about instead of having that natural conversation with each other now.
Yeah, like we can't BS as much. I can't accidentally give you the wrong numbers on something and correct it later, right?
Yeah, like you said, now people are listening and they're going to fact check us.
Of course.
Hopefully they look at the research we do, so then...
And of course, all that's also encouraged, right? if you fact check me and prove me wrong, that's actually a great thing because you went out there and you did your homework, right?
Of course, and then that also, we can touch back on that information that you give back to us. Help us grow so we can give you more accurate information.
But the main point being, we took that next step to turn this little bit of play that we had for each other, right? These boring conversations we threw at each other all the time and really making something out of it. But we realized that change. We know that this isn't playtime for us anymore, and we're here to actually do some work.
Yeah, now it's a part of my schedule. Like, I work Monday through Fridays, but now it's Monday through Saturday. This is my second job. Right. It's an added stress factor, but not like it's overbearing. I understand that this is a job now.
And some people need to realize that those little extra things that they do and monetize, that is now an extra job for you.
Yeah.
You need to either create more playtime for yourself or just really understand the differences of what you're trying to do and maybe even just take a step back. You don't need to constantly monetize everything you do. That's the whole point of hobbies, is getting and feeling that fulfillment from what you're doing. Whether it's playing video games and being the greatest at it, or writing a book because you're really passionate about a topic. Granted, things like books, right, products that you actually create out there, eventually they're going to sell.
Right.
But that's that difference. You did it for play. You did it because you were passionate about it, you cared about it, you didn't really set the schedule, and eventually you made this masterpiece that you can turn around and, sell, make some money off of. But
yeah, the play and the hobby aspect of it, it's supposed to be that stress relief. That's your outlet. But when you turn that into, now I have to do it, it's not a hobby anymore.
And getting on the points of hobbies here, we get to our real first problem that we saw with maintaining the proper balance of work and play. And that's culture has us focusing more on play and less on work. Because we live more in a now society. So doing the not so fun things should be out of the question. And it's really a great way to analyze where your scales are tipping when we're talking about this balance. Because if you play too much, there's probably a reason for that. Like I mentioned before on the previous episode, for myself, I worked a job that I didn't appreciate up front. It put me in a bad mood all the time. I was always stressed out. I decided, this is great. I'm sticking around with it because I'm making more money than I would doing anything else.
Yeah.
But what did I do with that money?
You went around and spent it.
Exactly.
Because you were trying to find the outlet.
Yeah, I bought all these toys to make up for that. And guess what? I worked so much that I never got to really use those toys. So I was just wasting the money and getting that immediate gratification of, hey, cool, I have this now, but not actually being able to use it or do anything with it. So I had this greater imbalance between my work and play. And then also at the end of the day, when all the math is done with it, if I could have been happier doing something else at the time, making less money, I probably would have had more money at the end of the year.
Right.
If you can understand that, right? There'd be less expenses going on. I'm not trying to make up for that playtime.
And like how you said with the playtime, I'm in that similar category of, I now understand my job in my current situation, that it's not my end goal of what I want to end up doing, but I'm fine with that routine that I've set for myself. And there are times where I do fantasize about leaving work early if it's slow or whatever, because I want to focus more on the playtime, which is the gym. Right. I could go home, instead of spending 8 hours at work, I can do 6-7 hours at work, go home and then spend 2 hours at the gym instead of 1. Get more of that playtime because of that now society that we live in. I want that gratification of the gym now. But that's why, like last episode, it was more important to realize to focus on what you're doing at work is what you love.
Because that's how you can have a great balance of that work and play. If you enjoy what you're doing at work, then you won't need to make up with it with additional playtime. You'll be able to play a normal amount because at work you're getting fulfillment from it.
That's the key word right there, fulfillment from it. Because it can give you that same level of stress. Hell, it could give you more stress if it's something you really want to do. If you want to open up your own business, right? That's something you want to do, but it's going to be a lot of stress at the beginning. At the end of the day, you're going to be more fulfilled with it than working a 9-to-5 for somebody else. So you're still not going to spend so much time focusing on playtime that you would in the 9-to-5 because you have the fulfillment from the career of that business you started for yourself.
Yeah, and another interesting side of that too is for the people that have been following along, where we talked last about the whole job situation. I made a quick career change from mechanics to something else, and I came back to mechanics, right? But because I now find that fulfillment, I take a new level of appreciation in mechanics, having left it and come back, that I no longer need that additional playtime. Nothing essentially changed, right? Nothing physically changed. I'm still doing the same thing I was doing, say, 3 years ago, mind the little intermission that I had doing something else. But because of the fulfillment, that appreciation, changing my perspective on what I'm doing, realizing that I am making an impact out there.
Yeah, the key was the self-reflection that you had,
Right.
realizing that you had to refocus your perspective.
Yeah, and once that was done, I'm able to get back in that proper balance of work and play.
Right.
Because now I don't need to spend all that extra money on toys because work's not so bad for me anymore, right?
Right.
So it's a great thing to analyze.
We just want to let you guys know that this episode is sponsored by coffee.
Coffee. It wakes you up. It also gives you caffeine, which is a great mood enhancer. And when you stop taking caffeine, it ruins your mood. So don't forget, continue consuming caffeine once you start.
Mind you, although it's highly addictive, it's one of the only socially accepted forms of addiction.
So proudly drink your coffee anywhere you want, because you can get it anywhere coffee is sold. It comes in cans. It comes in cups. You can get it cold. You can get it hot. You can get it black. You can get it with cream.
And there is no legal age to drink coffee, although it may be frowned upon to give to toddlers or pregnant women.
So go out there and get yourself a can of coffee whenever you want.
Now back to the episode.
So getting more into that second problem here, where not only do we live in this now society where we always need to be having fun and getting this type of immediate gratification and how all that plays against us, but our own human nature will kind of also play against us when we leave this kind of thing unchecked, because we are more likely to take the path of least resistance. So if we can be lazy, we will. And when this happens, our playtime can overtake our work time very easily. And a great example I like to use is going on vacations, right? I'm not very big on taking vacations. And the whole reason for that is I feel like getting back into work is so much harder than the types of rewards I got for taking the break in the first place. If I take a week off to go to the beach and stay at a hotel or something, right? And just enjoy myself and have a great time, when I come back, it's going to take me 2 weeks to get back into the flow of things.
Right. That's why I feel when you do take a vacation, because it is a good thing to have that rest period, have that time to just de-stress to that extreme, I feel like the max amount of time you should spend on that should be about a week. Because then you start getting in that routine of everything's just chill and pina coladas on the beach. You're not going to want to get back to working on cars or working in a hospital or working out in the sun. It's going to be a lot harder to get back into that flow because you did spend so much time on that being lazy. That just leads to procrastination, and that procrastination starts to build up over time and into your work, because now you're in the habit of being lazy. Is such a hard word, but that relaxed state of not having that flow of motion going again that you were having when you were just working. You overdid the vacation now, so then that leads to the procrastination when you get back.
Yeah, and that leads into, like we said, that issue of having a job that's not fulfilling for you, or at least a job that you don't perceive as fulfilling, right? Because why would you want to go back to that when you just spent all week at the beach?
Right.
If you don't feel what you do matters, then what's the point of not being gratified all the time?
And we're not saying, like in the last episode, we're not telling you to get a different job that you enjoy more. We're just telling you to reanalyze the situation. If it's a change in your perception of what you're doing, that's all it takes. In your case, where all it took was you to just change the perception and understand the work you're doing is helping other people, and that makes you feel more fulfilled in it. The same goes for other people.
Exactly. You don't have to go as dramatic as changing a job every 6 months, right? It's all about just how you feel about it. But when we get into that procrastination, right, that laziness, and also getting that fulfillment from work, when we talk about doing all these types of analysis to really see where we're at, to really be grounded in what's going on around us, I do feel like now would be a great time to mention that we are actually starting to compile all these types of ideas, right? All these types of self-diagnostics, and we're putting all this together into a book that we'll be happy to bring up here in the near future that we're fervently working on. So look forward to that. We're going to be going into some of these how-tos on how to balance these things out a little better.
Yeah, and the book will be better to go more in depth on certain topics instead of how we're doing and trying to fit main points into an hour or so in a podcast. The book will help bring more of that perspective in.
Yeah, just being able to sit down and really pick out each word specifically really does go a long way. So be on the lookout for that. But speaking of working, podcasting, and writing a book, it's very easy for us to see this third problem that we have with balancing work and play. And this is the issue of workaholics. Workaholics, we're typically talking about, people that work 80 plus hours a week, right? And this can be for multiple reasons. Some people just are naturally that way. They just want to work all the time. And there are also those who do it out of necessity, right? Just basic cost of living, man. It's gone up. It's getting harder for people to work basic jobs to afford a living. So they have to spend more time in them.
Yeah, minimum wage kind of sucks right now, depending on where you live. So it does cause people to work too much out of necessity.
Yeah, and what this does is it causes people to kind of forget about play. And now the issue that we run into is that they don't know how to play anymore. So two things happen from this. As soon as play gets presented to them, they either don't use it at all, and now we have this great imbalance of just constant productivity and never downtime, right? This constant breakdown of your mental and physical state.
Right.
Or they get that taste of play, and now they can't stop playing.
Yeah, then they tend to overdo it. Because that's the big problem of why we are kind of trying to get both sides of this issue here, in the people that play too much and then turn it into work, and then the people that just work nonstop, because they tend to overdo things and they overwork themselves, and then that starts affecting their physical health, their mental health. It starts draining them. That's why when you look at people that do work a lot, you kind of get this feeling of like stress or that they look old.
Yeah, I mean, you can just see it in them. You could see the bags under the eyes, Typically, people that work too much, it's usually followed by poor nutrition, right? Because there's a lot more mental things going on for people who are genuinely workaholics.
Yeah.
And that really does just pay a toll on your body. We're not designed to work all the time.
You need that big balance of your body needs to rest, whether it's play, if it's a hobby, or if it's literal rest and going to sleep. Yeah. People working 80 plus hours a week, that's not leaving you a lot of time to sleep and get the rest you actually need to get for your body to come back from that.
Let alone proper dieting and exercise and maintaining social relationships, right?
Yeah. All that takes a lot of time, and that's where one of the solutions comes in that we're going to talk in a second, but that's time management.
Yeah, and this is why we need to be proactive towards this type of balance, because we can't wait for something to go wrong in our lives to realize that we need this change, right? Or that, there might be an imbalance because my wife's mad at me all the time because I work 80 hours a week. Oh, I wonder why. You don't need to let it get that far. If you take that time to analyze what's going on, you can see the gradual changes that happen. And when things start gradually taking a negative turn, that is usually a good indicator that there's an imbalance in your life.
I like that point that you brought up about your wife being upset because you're working too much. This problem in general can ruin relationships that you have with people, whether it's family, whether it's personal or intimate. If you work too much, you need to have those social interactions. So if you're spending so much time focused on the work, you're not giving any to family members that want to spend time with you, that want to grow closer to you. And not spending that time with them is causing that split in that relationship. And it's going to cause them to move away and be cold towards you.
That same thing can also be affected in your play. If you're playing too much, you get that isolation from that product. You're getting that isolation from the productivity that you need to have in your life. So when money starts getting a little tight and you start getting issues that way,
people are going to be a little hesitant to try to help you because they don't think you use that time wisely. that all you do is just play. So then why should they help you out financially if you're just going to turn around and play with it?
Going into what I said earlier, right? If you're having this miserable time and you're playing all the time because you're having that bad time at work, like I said, I was making more money,
But you were just
but at the
blowing
end
through
of
it
the
all.
year, I had less
Yeah.
because I was playing too much. So the financial issues you might run into might not actually be because of the lack of money that you're generating. It might be because you're spending too much of it on play. So we need to be proactive and figure these things out for ourselves to really create that structure in our life, that balance that we need.
You know what I just realized? I fell into that problem without realizing it. And it wasn't that it was a lack of fulfillment in my job. It was just that I came from an upbringing that I didn't have my own money. So whenever I did get it, I blew it all.
Right.
But then I did realize that that was the problem, is that I wasn't smart with my money and I was just blowing through it. And I had those problems financially, and then it caused me to start working too much.
Because then you're either going to start working 80 hours a week or you're going to start just thinking you don't get paid enough for what you do, things like that, right?
Yeah.
But that's that issue, is we need to know our limits, because you don't need to push yourself too hard and get burnt out, like we mentioned earlier with the Workaholics.
Yeah. Or even like I just said, needing to then get that second job that I had for a majority of my life, I had to realize my limits after a while. Once I did get back on track financially, I started feeling like I was getting burnt out. And I think that's pretty obvious. I was working 2 jobs. I
Right.
didn't have a day off. I was working the weekend completely, and then throughout the week at my normal job.
All you had to do was quit that one job and also stop spending so much.
Right? So
Enjoy your time.
yeah, like I said, I did get back on track with that, having the second job, but then I kept that habit of becoming a workaholic. It could have kept going unless I realized my limits. I was getting to that point where I was burning out. What was the change that I needed to make? Just drop the other one. So
Because-
now I was financially stable with the one job, and now I have more time to rest.
Because that burning out doesn't mean you're going to come to like this grinding halt. It's not this wall that you hit. It's just a continual breakdown until the point that you get some serious problems in your life.
Yeah.
And that comes in many, many different forms. And I guarantee you all of them are not pleasant, right?
Mine was getting white hairs in my 20s.
Ah, that's genetics, man. Come on.
That's stress, dude. Come on. Excuses.
All good excuses. And to avoid excuses, we need to set boundaries and deadlines for both work and play. It's another solution that we see here, because you need to hold yourself accountable to those boundaries and deadlines that you create. And this is more important up front if you realize you have an imbalance. And this is ways to kind of resolve that. You're going to realize the changes that you need to make. It's easy to say, oh, I play too much, I need to work more. But how do you do that? It's the how-to that's the hardest part. So what you can do is, say you like playing video games, right? You come home from work and you sit on your computer and you play video games for 6 hours after an 8-hour day at work. Yeah, that's probably too long.
That's a lot of time.
Yeah. So you set a boundary. Okay, I'm going to, and even if you start at 4 hours, still a long time, but guess what? That's an improvement. You have an extra 2 hours to your day.
Yeah. It's understanding that time management, and that's what we're talking about.
And you don't have to beat yourself up. You don't need to be the perfect person immediately. You're not going to go, okay, so I'm going from 6 hours. You know what? Now I'm going to play just 1 hour a day because I'm going to be a better person. I guarantee you're just going to relapse into it.
Yeah,
And it's probably going to be worse that second time
It's
around.
going to feel more like an addiction at that point, because it's a lot harder to take that giant leap instead of small progressions.
But when you do get there, you take these small progressions and you set that boundary. Now you only play 1 hour a day. I don't even care if you start by sitting around and being bored for 5 hours, right? Eventually you're going to find something to do. Just make sure that whatever it is productive. Even if it's reading a book on how to improve yourself, right? How to live a more structured life, written by the motivating force. But when you do those things, you realize, you can be a little more productive with that extra time. Even though it's not necessarily work, it's things you can feel great about. Go around, clean the house. Be in a better environment for yourself. Even things as simple as that really do make an impact on you as an individual.
And one big point that I learned to realize over time, that, yeah, people always tell me, make a schedule for yourself or make these time boundaries for yourself so you can get more out of your day. Big thing that I had to realize personally that worked for me was having a consequence if I don't uphold the time boundary.
Yeah, and this is for more either, I guess you would say, like
Advanced.
advanced users of this technique, or at the same time, people who are really stuck in a rut. Because either you're going to really understand this up front, or you're really going to need your ass kicked to get broken out of whatever cycle you're stuck in. And these consequences don't need to be extreme.
In my experience, when I'm talking about consequence, I use it more of time management at the gym because I tend to overdo the gym sometimes, and I know that. But let's say I skip a day at the gym. I'm not going to be able to go home and eat some ice cream or have a full dinner. I didn't work for that. So that's my consequence. So
cut
now
those calories back a little bit, right?
Yeah, I got to cut the calories back. I can't overdo it because then now the next day it could just build up. The lack of discipline, if you want to say it that way, it could just become a snowball effect where then tomorrow I don't want to go. But I'm still going to eat the ice cream. I'm still going to overdo my dinner, but I'm not working it off. That consequence being now the next day, I'm going to have to work double and twice as hard just to make up for the previous day. Now I can't play video games if I wanted to. I don't have that extra time to move around and play because I'm setting time aside to fix the time boundary that I missed the previous day.
You can see where that little consequence that you gave yourself, right? That little bit of accountability that you recognize and you take action on that alone has had its own snowball effect. Like you said, not only did you cut your calories back a little bit on dinner, right? Because you didn't get in that extra cardio you needed. On top of that, tomorrow, now you can't play video games because you have to make up for that gym time. When you allow those consequences to happen in your life and you see how much more they can affect the progress of your week, you'll be less inclined to cheat on those boundaries that you set.
Big part of this is just to hold yourself accountable.
Yeah, and you can see where it's not even anything crazy, right? Because that's just a little small consequence, but it has such a ripple effect on the course of your week that it's enough that it's going to bother you when you do that. And that's why we're saying you don't need to have these crazy consequences where you're going to just make this huge punishment for yourself, because it really doesn't need to be that severe. You know what you did wrong, and you can be able to correct that. But this is why consequences are something that, like we mentioned, is really just mainly for either advanced users of this type of structure or people who really need to make some serious changes in their lives.
Yeah, because to make the consequences, you have to first know your limits.
That's why we also need to analyze our priorities and set time aside to enjoy all the things that we want to do properly. But speaking of priorities, we also need to take an account here for rest. This being one of the last solutions, because as you notice when we talk about work and play, this is everything about the waking hours of your life. Your rest is actually the most important thing. This takes precedence over both your work and your play.
100%.
You really need to be able to focus on your health. This is coming from that human nature perspective. Your work, you can overdo it at work. And even if you overdo it at work and you still make time for that play, you're cutting into your rest time. The whole point of balancing your work and play is to also make sure that you're getting an ample amount of rest every day. Your rest is so important to you being able to get out there and being productive. This is why workaholics get burnt out, because they're not getting enough rest. So now they're only doing half the job the next day and half of that job the following day. And it's this continual process until they're really just not doing anything anymore that's actually worth something.
Right. And with the example that you said with the person that plays for 6 hours a day and they get home, they have that full day at work. They come home, yeah, they can eat a little bit, but then they're going to play until 2 a.m. when that's cutting into their sleep schedule. And then that just continues to grow, like you said. And then they're going to have to make up with an energy drink, and that's not a proper form of energy.
Exactly.
You get that boost, but then you're going to feel twice as tired afterwards.
Right, and you just start snowballing down this negative path, which is why we're talking about realizing these changes so that way you can have that total balance in your life. So although this last solution might not necessarily apply to fixing work and play, it's just to show you the importance that rest has. That's really the last key element in the course of your day. You have your work, your play, your rest. We're just focusing on work and play because your rest always needs to be there. That's the precedence.
And then once you understand the importance of work, play, rest, the main point that we're trying to get across here is to not let the play become a distraction from a fulfilling life, because it needs to be a balance. Once you make the changes necessary and commit to keeping the balance, you can then reap the rewards of a healthier lifestyle. We're not telling you that you can't have fun in life. We're only telling you that you should have as much fun as you deserve to have. All right, so that's about it for this episode. Thank you everyone who has listened this far. Remember to like and share this video. It would really mean a lot to us. Remember to follow us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page at The Motivating Force. We have an Instagram at podcasttmf. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit that bell icon if you haven't done so already. And every Wednesday, we're going to be dropping an additional bonus episode. It's not going to be as long, but that's where we're going to be putting our segments for you. But for the weekly drive, remember that drops every Monday at 8 a.m. EST. Now go and get